Hi everybody, Dr. Taylor Burkhardt here to talk about tonight's Met stream, Hamlet by Ambroise Thomas. Now, I giggle every time I hear the name of this or have to say it out loud because it's the same as the French word for omelet, but rest assured, this is not an opera about omelets. It is the opera Hamlet. So it's actually it's based on an adaptation of the Shakespeare, but I will get to that in a minute. First, I want to talk about Thomas a little bit. Besides writing this opera and Mignon, his other famous opera, he's probably best known for being head of the Paris Conservatoire for the last bit of the 19th century. He was incredibly conservative and really dissuaded his students from listening to some of those newfangled composers like Wagner and Gabriel Fauré. Right, so he is incredibly conservative in his composition style, which isn't a bad thing. It gives us a lot of really beautiful bel canto at a time when not a ton of it was it wasn't the cool thing to do. But because of him, we have this really beautiful opera. So the play that it's based on is actually a French adaptation of the Shakespeare. So Alexandre Dumas, Père, and Paul Maurice were the writers of this adaptation. They saw an English acting troupe come to town in about 1827, and they did a performance of Hamlet, the original Shakespeare, and they were really taken with the idea of making their own French version. So according to French theater conventions, they needed to change a few things. So there were a lot of plays that this happened to actually during this period in France, where they would take existing plays and then improve them. And by that, I just mean that they would adapt it more to French cultural tastes. So they took Shakespeare and they really expanded Ophelia's part. So one of the things that they saw in that English acting troupe was the actress Harriet Smithson. And when I saw this name, I was like, man, that's really familiar. Oh, right, that's Hector Berlioz's first wife. So just like a fun fact. And they were so taken, though, with her performance of Ophelia that I think that must have been part of their inspiration in really expanding her role. Because in the original Shakespeare, Ophelia is kind of secondary. She's not really a big part of the action. So it's interesting that they saw this production and then went, we should make Ophelia bigger. So in their play adaptation and in this opera, her role is really almost as big as Hamlet's. So that works out really well to get a good diva, right? Got to give her a big role. So another thing that they changed was they changed the ending. So the original ending of Hamlet, he dies. But in this version, he gets to live and become king of Denmark. They also changed it so that a couple of the other big players in the original Shakespeare were downgraded to much smaller roles. Like the role of Ophelia's father, Polonius, is a huge role in the original Shakespeare, and he actually gets stabbed, he dies. And in this version, he's really not a big role, and he doesn't die, which has some implications for her mad scene, which we will talk about in a little bit. So the other really interesting thing, I really went down a rabbit hole with these guys to find out a little bit more. So Alexandre Dumas, the father, he's the father of Alexandre Dumas Jr., really, and Alexandre Dumas, fils, the son, wrote The Lady of the Camellias, which is what La Traviata is based on. And I also looked into Paul Maurice a little bit, and he co-created some plays with a lady named Georges Sand, who I immediately recognized as Frédéric Chopin's partner. So really good Wikipedia rabbit hole that I fell into. Just some fun research. Anyway, the first thing I want to talk about with you guys is this aria for Hamlet, Vin dissipe la tristesse. This is definitely text that doesn't exist in the original Shakespeare. It is a drinking song that it makes sense in the context of this French opera. So what's just happened is Hamlet has just seen his father as a ghost, talking to him on the ramparts of the castle, telling him that his uncle Claudius, who is the king's brother, murdered him so that he could become king. And he's, not to really be punny, but he's very haunted by seeing this and talking to his father, and is trying to squish those feelings down. He has, however, already started plotting revenge and has brought in this troupe of actors to do this play where something very similar happens, where the brother has murdered his brother in order to become king, just to try to catch Claudius out, the uncle usurper. Anyway, so he's decided now to drink with all of the actors, and he's singing, "Oh wine, please take away my sadness that weighs so heavily on my heart. Give me the dreams of intoxication and mocking laughter." So he's just really trying to get all of the heavy stuff that he's gone through off of his mind by drinking with some friends. So here is a little bit of "Au vin dissipe la tristesse." Voice, but you can tell it's a very classic da 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 da, very fun. And then he goes to a not so fun middle section where he starts thinking a little bit too much about the dark things in his heart. He says, "Life is dark, the years are short, only God knows the number of our beautiful days." He really goes to a dark place, and you can hear the tempo is actually a little bit faster than the first part, but it's all in minor. It's really ponderous. Right, so really sad. He can sing like that for a minute, and then his friends go, "Qu'a-t-il donc?" What? Like, what are you doing, man? We're having a good time. And then he goes, "Get away, dark omens," and sings a really beautiful cadenza that I'm really looking forward to hearing being sung. And he goes back into the A section where he says, "Oh, wine, take away all my sorrows." And it's interesting that this has become, such a signature part of the role of Hamlet, of Hamlet, because it's something that did not exist in the original Shakespeare. A lot of critics really disapprove of it being included at all in the opera because it's just so far removed from the text. For me, I think it really fits in the scheme of French grand opera. It really exemplifies just a different take on it, right? Sometimes British drama gets really dark and sad, right? And sometimes the French just want to party their troubles away. So I think it fits in great with the culture. I say that being about half British, so it's okay. I can say that they're sad people. Anyway, let's talk about Ophelia's mad scene. So just for context, there's been a ballet that's happened right before this, right? It's French grand opera, it's the fourth act. It has to start with a ballet. So all of the villagers have been dancing. It's very pastoral and beautiful. I don't know how much of the ballet that they will keep into next production. We'll have to see. But either way, there's something of that nature that's been happening. And then all of a sudden they see Ophelia. And she's dressed all in white, this long white flowing gown. She has flowers on her head, and she's acting a little out of sorts, you could say. And then she approaches them. then she says, "Bonjour, mes amis, permettez-moi de grâce de prendre part." She's like, "Oh, can I join you in your games and frolicking?" Right? And they are a little bit taken aback by this, and she goes on to sing that the tears of the night, the earth, I soaked the earth with my tears of the night. Des larmes de la nuit, la terre était mouillée. And then she says, and the lark, even before the dawn rose, was gliding in the air. And this is a very classic sign in bel canto that the soprano has gone crazy. She just lets loose with a lot of coloratura. So even in Ophelia's part prior to this, she really hasn't done a lot in terms of coloratura. She's had her aria, but that's mostly lyric. She has a duet with Hamlet, again, mostly lyric. And here she just lets a lot of notes out. Not done yet. And that's a sign to everybody that she's officially lost her marbles. It's a strange bel canto convention, but it's true. Think like Lucia di Lammermoor, right? One of the most famous coloratura mad scenes in history. So he's really playing into that. There's a little bit more to this recit. There's this really beautiful, simple melody. I actually think this is really beautiful. She's saying a sweet oath. She has just told them that Hamlet is her husband and I'm Ophelia. And she says, a sweet oath binds us. He gave me his heart and in exchange for mine. Then it starts escalating. She says, if somebody tells you that he's flown from me, he's fleeing and has forgotten me. And we notice the harmonies change a lot through here. We get more of these fully diminished sevenths, which is indicative of heightened emotion, usually sad. And so Thomas done a great job of accentuating that. But she tells him, oh, don't believe them. No. And she continues on that vein a little bit, and then we get a loud chord. If he betrayed me, I would lose my mind. And then she does this part is always, it's very ice cream truck at a horror movie to me, where you hear something really pleasant, but because of the context, it's actually very scary. We get this little waltz. It's recalling the waltz from before. And she's just dancing around and giving everybody flowers and singing. This is a little of that melody. Then she starts singing, Partagez-vous mes fleurs. Giving the flowers away to all you villagers. I just want to be part of you. And she continues, she has 2 full pages of just coloratura after this, where she's just singing la 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 and skipping around. Again, would be very cute if it weren't in the context of this mad scene. It's actually really horrifying to see because of that. Then all of a sudden the mood changes. We get this really complex chord, right? And then she says, oh, now listen to my song, because I guess what her singing before didn't count as a song. And she launches into, in all seriousness, she launches into this really beautiful ballad where she sings about a siren who pulls people underwater when they're heartbroken. So it sounds a lot to me like Thomas here is trying to imitate a classic English folk song, so thinking like Greensleeves. It also reminds me a lot of the end of Die Schöne Müllerin, if you're familiar with that, where he's also sad by a river and there's flowers involved. So by that I mean it repeats itself a lot, and it's really beautiful. It's very sad, and she sings a little bit more of that. Then all of a sudden she has more coloratura, of course, just to for change of mood, and also just to remind you that she's not just sad, but she's gone mad from being so sad. Then she sings. And we have that constant in the orchestra with those. It's really reminiscent of those sad folk tunes. I think that's what Thomas is trying to evoke here. Then she sings 2 verses of that with the coloratura uprest in the middle both times, and then we get to what I would call the cabaletta. It's this fast part, and it almost sounds like a normal happy cabaletta, right? Like, oh, I'm so in love and I'm going to sing about it. She has all these fragmented phrases. They're not real sentences. And in between, she just sings, again, just like a ton of coloratura, florid phrases. She sings, ah, dear husband, ah, dear lover, tender oath, supreme happiness. So I'm going to play this orchestral part for you because you can really hear the mood. It's that ice cream truck in a horror movie thing again. Supreme happiness. So we could end it right there, right? Nope, she has to die. So then she starts singing, her phrases turn into more like, oh, cruel one, I love you, tons of coloratura, cruel one, you see my tears, and then finally she says, for you I die. And then she lets loose with the most virtuosic phrase that we've heard yet. We'll hear tonight if she goes to a high C sharp or a high E, one of these. And then she sings what I feel like is a complete ripoff of the end of Juliet's Poison aria, but I'll tell you why I think it's effective in just a moment. It sounds like this. Oh, sorry, I had something on top of it. So, but very triumphant, right? And to me, it sounds exactly the same as the end of Romeo and Juliet, the Gounod, Juliet's Poison aria. But what it does is, by having this triumphant ending, it really allows Ophelia to be a heroine. She dies a heroine's death. It's so weird and sad the way she dies in the Shakespeare. She wanders around the moors, and they actually aren't even sure if she commits suicide in the Shakespeare. They're like, she might have just accidentally fallen in the pond because she was so crazy. So this allows her to be like, no, I die for love. And for me, that's actually pretty powerful. It fits in well with opera conventions. And I think that Thomas does a great job of actually making that her role in it, not just some sad discarded lover. She has some purpose, which it's not realistic, but it is really fitting within French grand opera conventions. So it makes sense that he does this. I also should mention, so in the original Shakespeare, she dies because her father has been stabbed, Polonius, and in here she dies because Hamlet has left her. So it also, they make the romantic story way bigger in the French version than in the British version. That's true of the play as well. And for me, that is an interesting take to really expand that romantic storyline and then make the cause of Ophelia's death because she died for love, not just because she's desperately sad that her father died. Again, it just lends itself more into that heroine type of role, like Tosca, you know, or later, obviously, or any of these other countless heroines that you can think of that died uh, for loving somebody. So, with all this in mind, I hope that you enjoy tonight's French Grand Opera en lait. So stay safe, wash your hands, and enjoy some opera.